rodafleming in the Philippines here. I know you thought you'd lost me, but in fact, A, I've been very busy, B, I've had a hellish throat infection, chest infection, which is now more or less cleared, but for weeks I just couldn't really speak. Maybe not a bad thing. And anyway, we're here. So today I want first of all to say thank you to everyone who's helped us, to all our supporters, to our new subscribers, and to those who continue to subscribe. Without you, we would not be able to do this, and it's very important that we continue this work. I continue this work, but alongside my partner Sam, who is very, very important, and of course I love her. So, in particular to Amanda, thank you very much, and I hope that all of this will continue, that we can continue to deliver good quality information that is not really being covered anywhere else on the internet. So, today I want to kick things off by talking about sex, sexuality and gender. Now, that might seem fairly basic stuff for a channel that has dealt with much more complicated ideas in the past, but I've noticed over the last few weeks, looking at the responses to videos, that there are still people out there who don't understand what sex, sexuality and gender actually are and how they're related. And there are some people who think sex is gender. It's not. Now, it might be in some strange dictionary sense, but in the sense that we're talking about here, when we're talking about human sexualities, gender and sex are not the same thing. So let's begin with the basics. Sex. Sex is immutable. It is established at conception. Now, all female gametes, obviously, these are ova, have one X chromosome, because females only have X chromosomes. Male gametes, those are sperm, have either X or Y, because males have both X and Y. And so when the sperm comes together with the ovum, you've got a 50% more or less chance of it being either an X sperm or a Y sperm, so you've got a 50% chance of the fertilized cell being either male or female, that is either XX or XY. Once that's established, it can never be changed. You cannot change sex. You will always be the sex that was determined at the moment of conception. Right? Now, there are a small number of what are called intersex conditions where basically nature made a mistake. Some of these involve the processes that lead to the production of the gametes, that's the sperm and the ova, such that they perhaps have extra X or Y chromosomes, which can lead to double XY, which is Klinefelters, double XYY, XYY, and other what are called mosaic spectrum conditions, which will often be made visible at birth by abnormalities in the external genitalia. Nobody is assigned sex at birth. Nobody. The doctor does not decide what sex you are. He just observes what your external genitalia indicate that you must be. Right? You are assigned, if anybody's assigned anything, you're assigned your sex at the moment of conception, and you can never change that. So that's really important to understand it. Sex, male or female, cannot be changed. Now, sexuality is the next bit. Now, to understand sexuality, the first thing you have to understand is, why are we here? The reason humans exist is to make more humans. You only exist to carry forward your genes, right? So in fact, all humans exist to reproduce. And that is the reason why sexologists take the view that everything will have a motivation in sex, because everything does. That's all you're here to do. Men are here to get women pregnant. Women are here to produce, conceive and gestate new humans within their bodies, because we're mammals. We don't have any other purpose. Okay? That's not saying that you can't live a good life. That's not saying that you can't do many other things with your life, but your primary evolutionary purpose is to make babies. Right, so how are we going to do that? Well, you have to be attracted to other people in order to have sex with them. Because how do you make babies? By having sex. So that is your sexuality. Normally, males will have male sexuality, and normally females will have female sexuality. And we can define the basis of these sexualities as males have a desire to penetrate, and females have a desire to be penetrated, right? Because The males have to get their sperm out there into all the females that they're going to penetrate, and the females have to get sperm inside them in order to conceive the children they're going to have. Now, yes, it is much more complicated than that, but in really simplistic terms, sorry, it's quite warm in here, that is how it works. So your sexuality defines the people to whom you're attracted, right? Because you want someone who can penetrate you if you've got female sexuality, and you want someone who will be happy for you to penetrate her if you've got male sexuality. Now, that leads on to something else. Humans are not all the same. We don't look the same. We don't act the same. There's a thing called gender. And gender is a set of signals and behaviours through which we advertise our sexuality to prospective mates. Okay? So if you're a man, a male with male sexuality, then you will have masculine gender because you want to attract females. If you're female with female sexuality, then you will have feminine gender because you want to attract males. Right, so now we have two sexes, two sexualities, and two genders. There's not 167 genders. That's just bullshit. There are two genders. Now, how does it come about that some people have one particular sex, say male, just for argument, but have feminine gender? How is that possible? Well, this has been a question that has been asked for many, many years. And in fact, it was answered intuitively by sexologists in the 19th century, and particularly by a British sexologist called Havelock Ellis, who was writing in the early 20th century. And he called this syndrome sexual inversion. Now, for many years this was like a very popular theory, and then it was a not popular theory, and the fact is now we know it's right. We know it's correct. And how do we do that? Because we know what causes this. Numerous studies have been done now which indicate that what we call homosexual transsexuals, that is, people who are same-sex attracted and cross-sex identified from very young, sometimes as early as 2 years old, have had some anomalies in the delivery of testosterone to them while they were in utero, while they were still babies in their mother's womb. Now, gestation is a long period, it's 38 weeks. And the ongoing supply of testosterone will have different effects at different times, different points in the development of the baby. So a lot depends on how radical the anomaly in the testosterone delivery has been and when it happened. Amongst the consequences that we know of this failure in the delivery system of testosterone is a tendency for the individuals, if they're male, to be feminized across a range of parameters, and if they're female, to be masculinized. There's other effects as well. A very interesting work's been done by, here's a book about it actually, Prenatal Testosterone in Mind by Dr. Simon Baron-Cohen, and it's a short read, but it's well worth reading. Baron-Cohen's interest is basically in autism, which he is able to show is also linked to this this breakdown in the delivery of testosterone in the womb. It's not necessarily associated with anything sexual, but it's another thing that can be caused. So we know that these anomalies are real and they have biological effects. There's plenty of evidence to show that there is an etiology, that is, talking about males here, going from feminine homosexual males through to homosexual, transsexual, trans women, right? In such that some are less affected, or this is what appears to be happening, is that some are less affected by this prenatal testosterone delivery anomaly than others, and the least affected are likely to remain appearing as the society around them expects them to appear, in this case if they're male, as gay men, whereas the most affected will find this extremely hard to do, and they are most likely to transition, even in societies which are very, very hostile to transition, such as the West has been and actually remains. One of the things that's implied there is that the nature of the society that you live in is very important in terms of how you present in terms of gender. Gender is a real thing. If you have female sexuality or male sexuality and you appear as masculine in the first case or feminine in the second case, you'll experience gender dysphoria. You'll experience discomfort at this presentation. It's the same as if I were to put on it's a horrible thought, I know, but never mind. If I were to put on, you know, a basque and panties and stockings and walk down the street, I'd feel extremely uncomfortable. Unless I was taking part in a theatre show where you get support from the people around you. If you were just doing that, then it would feel very, very uncomfortable. And that's just a tiny insight into what gender dysphoria in its strongest forms can be. Essentially, gender dysphoria is transition desire, but at a clinical level, where it really does start to impede the individual's ability to live, in this case, what would be their expected gender. They can't do it anymore and they have to transition. And the way that works in terms of when people will transition is that an individual will transition, right? This is a person affected by this hormonal delivery anomaly will transition if their feelings of gender dysphoria, that's their discomfort at appearing in the gender that's expected of their sex, become greater than their fear of social rejection for transitioning. So it's really quite simple. The more hostile the society around you is to you transitioning, the less likely you are to do it. And that's actually the real reason why you see so many trans women in Southeast Asia. There's a very low hostility here. Appearing feminine is normal for homosexual males in Southeast Asia, and vice versa. Appearing masculine is normal for homosexual females. So it's really not a big deal. If you feel that you're gay and you want to get yourself a man and you want to demonstrate your sexuality, you turn into a girl. And that has been barred in the West for many, many reasons, mostly political, none of them good. And it's changing now. It's changing now, such that people are grabbing onto the gender that best suits them. And remember, this has nothing to do with the 167 airhead genders. That's an artifact of feminism and postmodernism, and it can be completely disregarded. It's a part of the transgressivist political ideology of certain groups within society. We're talking here about people who actually have biological conditions, right, that they need to deal with. And these biological conditions are caused by a known phenomena, which is sexual inversion caused by hormone delivery anomalies in the womb. So what I want you to understand when you're talking about this is, yes, sex is immutable, it can't be changed. You're always going to be sexual. Sexuality is conditioned in many ways, but one way in which it can be conditioned, and it's very obvious that this is the case, is through this anomaly in testosterone delivery in the womb. You either get too much or you get too little, and this causes a range of effects in adult life as you progress through childhood and into adult life. And then gender is a function of sexuality. So gender can't just be chosen. It's not just a social construct that you can just, I'll just change at will, which is what the 167 airhead genders are about. No, not at all. Gender is essentially linked to your sexuality, but there might be a mismatch between your sexuality and your sex, right? So sexuality and gender are absolutely linked together. You can't separate them. If you attempt to separate them, you'll have gender dysphoria. It's really that simple. It's not complicated. This is not rocket science. But there is a biological condition, which I'm calling sexual inversion, which is caused by this imbalance in testosterone delivery in the womb, which causes this, what I call transgender homosexuality, which is feminine male and masculine female, because they're always to some extent, such males are always to some extent feminine, such females are always to some extent male, and it's an etiology. So you get that, goes right across to the complete inversion, and you get somebody who just has to appear as a woman. And often, like Sam, it's an absolutely stunning, wonderful woman, and she's just a woman. There's no way around it. It's not an act. That's what she is. The other thing I just quickly want to bring up, don't want to spend a great deal of time on it, is bisexualism. Now, bisexualism is a little bit of an oddball. If you're looking at this sexual inversion model, then it should be immediately obvious that bisexualism is not a separate phenomenon. It's just what might happen to someone who's right at the least affected range of end of the etiology, right, of sexual inversion caused by hormone delivery anomalies, that they might be somewhat shifted towards the feminine in their shifted towards the female rather in their sexuality, but still somewhat male. And so they're going to be kind of in between. They're going to be like, I'm quite attracted to men and I'm quite attracted to women, and maybe not even understanding why. But it's just because the effect of the testosterone delivery anomaly has not been strong enough to fully feminize that aspect of their natures or of their bodies. So they're left in this kind of in-betweeny world where they could be one thing or they could be other, and it will depend very much on the nature of the society around them again, which one they will tend to prefer to be. I'm making this point because Freud, one of Freud's great mistakes was in that he thought that everybody started off bisexual and then that you adopted a particular sexuality as you grew old. And that's not true. There certainly are forms of homosexuality, and for example, pederastic homosexuality would be a classic example, where events around, environmental events around the time of puberty will actually change your sexuality radically, so that it carries on through your life. That does happen, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the sexual inversion issue, and in this case, bisexualism is just not very far along the line. You're much closer to the standard heterosexual, the standard model for your sex, okay, than someone who simply has to transition, someone like Sam, who just can't live as a man. I mean, Sam could not live as a man. It's not possible. And if you know some people like Sam, if you know homosexual transsexuals, you'll know that they're the sweetest, kindest, loveliest women you'll ever meet. They're just amazing, and they are not acting. This is not something they're putting on. It's not some sort of, I fancy a man so I'm going to do this. It's how they actually are. They can't do anything else. I think that I'm very concerned at the moment because I see a huge backlash occurring, orchestrated by some seriously bad actors, including people who call themselves gender critical feminists. Well, they're just TERFs by another name. And I can accept to a certain extent the TERF's argument with autogynephilic transgenderists or transvestites, call them what you like, they like transitioners, there's the word, transitioners, who call themselves lesbians and invade female spaces, and it's all like, this is just gross. And I can understand women getting annoyed about this, but my concern is that you leave the HSTS out of this because they have nothing to do with AGP. AGP are not affected by this particular anomaly of testosterone delivery in the way that HSTS are. Now, there might well be an innate cause of AGP. It appears that it appears everywhere in the world. At one time that was thought not to be the case, but I can assure you, everywhere I've researched this, you'll find AGP. Right? So it does seem to have some sort of innate stimulus, but we don't know what it is. What we can be sure of, however, is it's not the same one. It's different. HSTS are not invading women's toilets. They're not a threat to women. They might cause women some jealousy, but other than that, they are not a threat. They do not predate sexually on women. Not ever. HSTS, male to feminine that is, they simply don't do it. And I have to say that my experience of HSTS female to masculine, and I do know quite a few here, is that they tend to be extremely good partners to their women, natal women partners. They're incredibly supportive and gentle, and you can see that the women really enjoy their relationships because these guys are really good with their women. I don't think these are a threat either. I really don't. Although they're not going to be using the women's toilet, they're going to be using the men's one. That's just to kind of even up the playing field there. Anyway, that's the first one for this year. I'm going to do some more on this subject of the hormonal imbalance, the anomalies in hormone delivery in utero. I'm going to do more videos about this, but we'll be a bit more technical in those, and we'll look at the specific papers which analyse the situation and make us come up with the conclusions that certainly I've come to, is that this is all part of the same phenomenon. You know, the HSTS, transgender homosexuality, and the anomalies in hormone delivery in the womb this is all the same thing, right? One is causing the others. Anyway, that's enough for just now. I hope you all have had a great beginning to the year. It's kind of warm here, it's kind of pleasant, but it's okay. Sam's just gone off to see one of her pals. She's lovely, I love her. I'll tell you more about that in the next one. See you soon, take care.